And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Andrew Reid, a great friend of mine and BC Tech's. And little known fact, Andrew was actually my last pre-COVID hug from someone other than a family member. So it was a very good hug, Andrew, but I need another one. So we need to see each other soon.
Yeah.
Andrew is co-founder and group CEO of Rival Group and Rival Technologies. And before that, he founded Vision Critical, a cloud-based customer intelligence platform that was one of the first generation of breakout BC Tech anchor successes. He was a member of the BC Tech board for almost 8 years, which is hard to imagine. And before we get started, a reminder that if anybody has any questions, just drop them in the chat because we definitely want to hear from you and what you want to learn from Andrew. But with no further ado, please join me in welcoming Andrew Reid. Great to have you with us today.
Great to be here, Jill. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
So maybe we could just start with, can you tell us a bit about Rival? So what does Rival do? What's the business?
What we're really doing is disrupting the world of email surveys. No surprise coming from me. We live in a world right now where if you can't track something, we leave a huge wake with our credit cards. We leave a huge wake with our social presence. A lot of businesses base their decisions, especially consumer-facing decisions, on this, this transactional data. If you can't ask it, if you can't track it, you have to ask it. And so if you need to ask it, often that's a survey. Anyone here who has ordered on DoorDash, Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, anywhere in the last few days, you've probably got a survey. I mean, we get surveyed to death all the time. And I think we've hit what I say is sort of peak oil on email-based surveys. If you're 24 or under, our research shows that email is not your primary mode of communication. If you're 24 or over, when you open up Outlook or you open your email client, your number one goal is, what can I delete? You're on the hunt to delete things. Surveys are prime candidates to get deleted, yet they're the lifeblood of companies. It's hugely important. So we've built an end-to-end conversational platform that runs in the mobile web. So it will run on top of social platforms like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. And we also use SMS for a lot of recontacting of people. And we help brands facilitate learning, understanding the customer journey, really discovering their customers in a lot of different ways. So I started this company about 4 years ago, and it's been a fun ride. And we're at that point now where we've got product market fit, and we're really on that scale journey. Just a couple more examples. Brands like Allbirds. Anyone who's tried Allbirds, which is a big direct-to-consumer shoe company, Allbirds has something called the Flock. It's a group of 3,000 people that works with Allbirds, and their product team interacts directly with their customers and allows them to do things like validate decisions before they make them, help drive decision making, and what's really important is help create content. And content coming from the customer is hugely important. And the list is pretty long. I mean, we have some pretty cool clients. People like P. Diddy has a media company called Revolt, and Diddy will post stories on his Instagram that have our chats in them so they can get feedback. And they've got a very large, very cool African-American based community that they talk about social issues and political issues and a wide range of things. So it's been a fun journey, but hopefully that gives everyone an idea of what the actual experience is like. And like me, I hope you see that this is an obvious step forward from the traditional survey, which puts you in this sort of test-taking mode. Every time you get a survey, you kind of are treated a bit like the lab rat in the maze that has to find the finish line versus a real human and a real consumer.
Thank you, Andrew. That was really, a great overview from you, but also just actually experiencing the chat was pretty interesting for me. I can see exactly what you're talking about. It's way more engaging, way more interesting. I didn't get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm abandoning this now, which I so often do.
Which usually happens
with surveys, right?
So thanks so much for having me, and happy to sort of talk about where things are at. It's definitely, the last company I started was in the year 2000. Life was different. We didn't have these phones. We didn't have subscription revenues as a normal thing. It's very interesting and kind of humbling starting it again in this world with the competitive dynamics that are going on in our city, which are fantastic for our city, But obviously, as an entrepreneur, there's challenges involved with that.
Yeah, I really would say, well, we did a more traditional style poll off the top, right? And people are saying talent, 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 senior experience talent. I mean, is that what you're encountering at Rival? Is talent your biggest challenge?
Yeah, talent is really the biggest challenge right now. It's hard, and we hired 25 people in Q3. So we're clearly we're cruising, and we're doing our best to hire as many folks as we can. And I'd say of those 25 people we hired, half of them were recruiter based, and half of them we were able to place ourselves. And it's not even an issue around paying for recruiters anymore. I mean, recruiters, we're fine with paying those fees. It's just trying to find really good people. The amount of times that you go to hire someone now, and when they go to leave, you suddenly have given that person the gift of a 20% salary increase, more vacation, and I don't know, a new car or something, because it's so competitive and it's so difficult. What I like about it is, I think the silver lining is it makes the company itself and what the company is about so much more important. That showing up at a job because I know I can make more money is an obvious thing. Anyone who's a developer, who's a sales executive, who's in customer success can clearly puddle jump their way to make more money very easily in the city, in Vancouver, in Canada, anywhere in the tech sector in North America, I'd say. And so you really have to focus on genuinely caring about your people, which is something I always have, and I think I like that field leveling it requires for all entrepreneurs.
That's perfect. I mean, I think you've hit on something that's really insightful there, which is because sometimes we think of this lack of talent or talent shortage as a problem, but actually it can be an opportunity, right? Because it forces you to become really crisp and really concrete about why somebody should join your company, and really focus on your culture, right? What is your culture? What are people going to experience when they join your company? How are they going to thrive with you? So tell us a bit more about how significant culture is to Rival. Sorry, I realize I've set you up for success there because you're one of the finalists for Culture Year.
I appreciate it. Yeah, so there's a few things. I think at the beginning, it's really just how do you run your business? What's the cadence of your business? I think at my old company, there was definitely always prizes for being the first person in and the last person out. There was this sort of attitude around putting in the time, and this idea of being invested, and invested really had this direct correlation to the amount of time you put into the business. For us, we really start with the system we use to run our business. We run on the ScaleUp system, which is the Vern Harnish. And I feel like I should be getting paid by Vern because I've sent his books out to a lot of different people, but it works really well. There's the Rockefeller Habits ScaleUp platform has 10 core habits for how you run your business. And for us, it's been massive for, how that's given us this rhythm, and the rhythm of how we meet with our folks, how we seriously take feedback from our customers, from our employees, how we set, all those cadences. And so it starts there. And then it goes down to, all the way down to the fun things you want to be able to do with people. So for us, it starts with quarterly planning. What is our goal for the year? What are our quarterly plans? How do we track those plans? How do we really celebrate success? How do we take dysfunction and put it in the middle of the room as much as we can, and make sure we're doing what we can to clear that dysfunction? And then, how we celebrate each other. And so again, it's funny because you can't, you can't just sort of have that vibe you get when you're all together celebrating. It's very hard when everyone's virtual. We have some people that are coming back to the office now, but we find that, we need to find ways to celebrate. So we've been doing some pretty interesting things, I'll say, on Zoom. And we try and make sure that every time we're putting our heads down and working on big issues, at the same time, we are celebrating each other and we are learning more about each other. And those can be simple things like, I have every single week we have a leadership meeting, and I have a, question of the day I ask, and they're often goofy questions, and we track those, and the answers to those questions show up in very interesting ways when we communicate, progress and plans to the rest of our folks.
It's interesting. So that's the success story. But I often think it can be really interesting to analyze situations where, maybe it didn't go well. So whether it's currently or in the past, what's your like fail story on culture? What did you learn from it?
Yeah, so that's a good one. So failing on culture, yeah, it doesn't, it I think you have to really make sure everyone's bought in. I mean, we have these things called social pods. A lot of people are doing this now, where we've taken disparate team members. So someone that's in G&A and accounting will get paired up with someone that's a QA person and a designer and a salesperson, and they'll be in a social pod. And we give those people a budget. And if we don't kind of guide that and help support those individuals to be able to be able to to be able to learn more each other and work well. One of our social pods are in their early days, I think they just issued each other like Visa gift cards for the amount of money they gave each other, and said, okay, well, life's really busy, so why don't we all just take this money and we can use it to buy a new pair of shoes and we'll move on. So that was, that was a bit of a learning. My style of how I like to function and run businesses is to create a plan that's got great measurable success and goals on it, and then give people a lot of autonomy to go and implement that plan. And if you don't have the right people and the right leadership and the right buy-in, that can come back and bite you, in a lot of different ways. And so, I think early on in Rival, I hired some folks and made some and drove some decisions. And when I checked in on the progress of those individuals, a quarter later, I found, wow, we've got a serious problem here, and now I got to start from scratch all over again. And so, trying to find that balance between being, and especially with COVID, no one wants to be like crazy micromanaged. And in the virtual world, the feeling of I need to sort of punch the clock every time I'm coming in and have this insane levels of oversight is tough. And so just trying to find that balance, I found has been tricky. I think a lot of people take the cues from the core leadership group and how we show up, the amount of fun we're having. Everyone's seen it when you're on Zoom and you're like, wow, what's going on with Jill today? Like, something is up with her because she is not happy. And so how you show up really, really has a huge impact. The amount of times I'll have people that'll be side texting me, they'll be like, what's wrong today? And I'll say, well, nothing, I'm just really tired, or something's going on. I find that virtual has been really interesting for how in tune we are with each other's cameras and looking at each other now.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? We've developed this seventh sense or something that we can now discern meaning from body language.
Totally.
Listen, how does culture change as you grow? Like, and I guess embedded in that question is something that I know everybody worries about, which is, can your culture scale? Can your culture that you love, that you've created so intentionally and really nurtured and developed at the growth stage, can it survive scaling? How would
Yeah.
you?
And I kind of failed at this at my last company, in the fact that when you're 10 people, then your culture is pretty strong because you look at these people every single day. When you're 50 people, you know everyone's name. When you're 100 people, you still know everyone's name. When you're 200 people, you even still can have a lot of that original fiber of the brand, of the culture, of the company there. But if you don't document it and you don't continually infuse it into your actual business, then it kind of very quickly slips away. I can remember the old shop showing up at an office in a faraway place and walking in and meeting a bunch of people and feeling like, wow, this is not the vibe that I thought of when I created this company. And so culture can, but culture is not about like foosball tables and having a beer keg and wine on tap. That I feel like we need to figure out a way to redefine what it is, because that's like kind of fun perks. Those are kind of, you could call those extrinsic rewards. Probably the intrinsic side of why I actually care and give a crap about the place I work is what's most important. And that's where for us, taking some of the values that we have that are around engagement and inspiring, and Ohana, which is about family, how we infuse those into our actual planning, how we take the values we have and we try and push our leaders to make sure those values are reflecting in the decisions that they're making, in the kinds of people that they're hiring, and how they're conducting themselves. And you want to have people leaning in, but I find that the articulation and the original part, you always think that coming up with your culture, your values is really difficult. What's really difficult is making sure you continually push those into the quarterly plans you have, the weekly check-ins you have, the annual check-ins when you're doing annual planning, all of the different aspects that go with running the business. Then you get the connective tissue together. It's easier said than done, for sure. And I'm not saying we figured it all out, but it's definitely something that we lean in on, and I think has a difference, because makes a difference, because my guess is 80% of my staff are getting pushed on LinkedIn weekly about the opportunity to go somewhere else and to make a lot more money, or the opportunity just to have a conversation, because there's so many recruiters that are all out there. And the only way to sleep well at night is to know that you're doing all the right things, and you have this connective tissue between the reason for being, why we're here, and the job I do every single day.
Yep, I love that. I really feel like you've given us a masterclass on culture, what it is and what it isn't, right? But it's connective tissue. I think you're really onto something there, because it is the connective tissue between purpose, between job, and between those results that you're talking about. Deliver the results and the targets and the plan of the company,
Totally.
and less about foosball. Listen, okay, so I have a question for you. You started Vision Critical in your early 20s. What is it like, or how is it different?
Yes, Jill, I'm 45. Fine. We all know now. Thank you.
Oh, it's going to be so diplomatic. It's going to be so diplomatic. But you're slightly older now. So what's different starting a company when you're 20, starting a company when you're 40?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And for those that are, I mean, when you're in your 20s and you're an entrepreneur, I mean, often you sort of have, it's a good thing if you have more confidence than brain power or capability. You need an enormous amount of confidence, low levels of anxiety to be able to move forward. And I think a lot of people, maybe pre-COVID, at least in their 20s, have that. And so the benefit of that is you sort of have the reality distortion field going on, and the fact that you operate, you're not thinking about all the cues and everything that's going on, and how you're being judged. When you're in your 40s, I'm the person that people complain to. I'm people back the truck up and dump down whatever that is going on, and not reacting, learning when you need to be curious. This idea of curiosity. I talk to myself often about when I'm reacting to something, trying to be curious about why I'm reacting to that, and then trying to ask a lot of questions to individuals when they, are feeling like they need to be supported. So, I mean, I guess said in another way, when you're in your 40s, maybe you have a bit, as an entrepreneur, as a second-time entrepreneur, you have deeper shock absorbers. You know what you need to sort of just let lay. Sometimes people need to, need a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes they just need to vent. Sometimes they need action. And so trying to understand when to show up and how to show up is very interesting. You don't want to be someone that's talking out of the, I want to be consistent in how I lead the group. At the same time, we want to make sure that, that I and other leaders are showing up appropriately for the situation. Sometimes that just means, to absorb. Sometimes that means to wait. Sometimes that means to act. And so I think that's probably the second time thing, and being a bit older, is you have that perspective, which just makes you, operate slightly more effectively than when you're younger. But, younger is fun too, because a lot of energy, and again, that reality distortion field, I kind of wish I had it, because I've seen so many different situations, and I failed fabulously a few times. So I'm a lot more aware of myself now.
I love the way you described that it was high confidence, low anxiety. And I quite often think that, like, God grant me the confidence and the belief and optimism that I had in my early 20s, right? The time knocks a few
I
things
see some
off
people
you,
that are
right?
nodding. They're like, yeah. Okay. Or they know people like that. They're like, I know a guy just like, or a woman just like that. So
Exactly. But it's a wonderful and a fantastic founder or entrepreneur spirits to have, right? You really need it. But okay, Rival is now 3 years old. So, moving from toddler to preschooler. so, so tell me, how's it going? What's been your recent, growth story, and what's on the horizon?
Yeah, it's going really, really well. We're just in the middle of getting some additional financing in the door to be able to grow. Uh, you know, Everyone's journey is slightly different, but I do think that there's sort of a pattern in how you scale and grow companies, in that you get something, you have an idea, my styles, you have an idea, you socialize that idea with some prospects. They get to the point of saying, yeah, I'd probably buy that. You then go and hustle your way to be able to build something that can solve a couple of problems. Actually, ironically, the first client I ever had there was a paying client, was the BC Liberals, and we did some work for Christy Clark when she was running for re-election. So that sort of is putting a stake in the ground for where we were at back then. And then it's this dance to be able to continue to find product market fit while you continue to build the product. The biggest thing you get freaked out about when you're scaling is, building the wrong things. You can spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars building things that you think are really important, but that are maybe not as important for your customer. It's been really interesting being in the B2B space in 2021, because the fear of being hacked is alive with all these brands. If you go talk to someone like Marriott Hotels, who've had these huge data breaches, their security compliance team has high levels of anxiety about that. So for us, we had to really prioritize, ISO 27001 certification, SOC 2 Type 2, HIPAA certification, knowing that if we're going to deal with any kind of first party data, that can be super secure. And that was a very big shift to be a startup and to have the constraints that come with those certifications, has been kind of difficult. So we've been, the journey has really been all about, we got those first handful of clients, went through, built a platform, realized we didn't really have the right team on the platform side. So then, I'm on my third iteration of development leadership, and I really feel like I have the right team. I'm on my second iteration of sales leadership. I now have the right team. So it's been, you have to sort of be okay and not feel too, does these mistakes happen? And it's sort of evolutionary that you have various different chapters you go through. We're through that chapter now where I now have it's interesting. I have a first-time CMO, a first-time CTO, a first-time CRO, a first-time, I have a lot of people that are at the right point of their career to do this role, but this is their first time in the sort of C-suite doing that role. And so there's a lot of opportunity that gives you, because you're not bringing in these preconceived notions of how I used to do it. If that idea of, when I hear an investor say, or I'm at a board meeting for my company or someone else, and they say, we need someone who's been where you are going. I used to think, yeah, we totally do. And let's step aside, because that person really probably knows what's going on. But the world's changing really fast. Technology's changed really fast. And I'd rather have a team full of people that are the first timers, but that are the right cultural fit, that have the right level of buy-in, because I think we can win every time with that kind of a group, versus this idea of been there, done that. So, I clearly can just step aside and watch you, take the conch. So it's been fun. And now we have, we've got about 50 tier one customers. Our growth rate's great. We're at the point now where I like to tell people we're like a 6-foot alligator. If you read the stories about alligators, when alligators are babies, they are very susceptible to everything else in the jungle. And once they become 6 feet, they are not. And so we're just right now emerging as a preschooler or a 6-foot alligator. I hope to grow into a 13-foot alligator one day.
That's a great visual. I'm imagining a bunch of 6-foot alligators at preschool. So I've got one more question for you before we go to the chat. So everybody get your questions ready, and please be prepared to ask your questions of Andrew in a moment. But one thing that I might just quickly plug, open invitation to you and your team, Andrew, but also to others on the call that might be thinking this. The BC Tech C Councils can actually be a great place If you are a first-time CTO, first-time CMO, or just looking to sort of have some peer-to-peer support in another organization or a outside your organization to bounce things off. So that's what people often use it for, and it's a great resource. So please don't hesitate to engage with
And
us.
I chaired one of those C councils for many years, and the amount of things that I was able to learn, whether it's, everyone's going through things like hiring, things like Shred, trying to navigate IRAP, trying to figure out how do they get, if they don't have a TA on the government side, how to get one. So you often will, in those sessions, you kind of can jam on one issue where everyone can bring very unique perspectives. And really interesting things happen. And one of the C councils I was on had a dramatic effect on one of our big tech companies in the city because of the connections that were made at that C council. So yeah, I fully endorse it. They're great.
Oh, thank you. We got that on film, right? Okay, so my final question is just, this is something that we don't always talk about, but I would love us to talk about it a bit more. How does it feel personally to scale? And I invite you to help me in sort of myth busting a bit, because I think sometimes people think that one day we grab the golden key in the game and all of our problems fall away. And actually the scale up journey is kind of different than that. So you've done it a few times. Tell the audience how it feels.
Yeah, it's I think you have to have that eternal optimism that, like, I tell myself all the time, in 6 months it's going to get easier, in 6 months it's going to get easier. It's not easier, it's just different. And I think in scaling, the job of the entrepreneur is to move themselves, and it's really hard to do, from working in the business to working on the business. And that's a subtle thing, but it's a big thing, which is, if you are a micromanager and you want to have control over everything that's going on, I think scaling is a very stressful job for you. If you trust your people and you allow and are able to set clear goals, have a really strong rhythm of how you meet, when you meet, and how you bring things up, and have transparency, it can be fun. And I'm having fun right now because I'm not sitting around, touch wood, right now being like, are we going to be a viable concern in 6 months? I mean, we've got to the point where our business is now rolling and scaling, and now we're just continuing to improve. So that's my, if I had advice to give anyone, is it's take the scary steps to stop working in your business and work more on your business, get in front of where you're going, and trust your leadership.
Great advice. Thank you so much. Okay. So let's make sure that we're grabbing questions from the chat. So please don't hesitate to raise any questions that you'd like to ask. Andrew, I've got a couple. And let me just start with Julia's asking, how would you define your culture at Rival? So maybe I'll ask it the way we do for the Technology Impact Awards. So give me 3 words that describe the culture at Rival that might help someone have a flavor of what you're like.
Yeah, I mean, it's energy, it's inspiration, and it's family, in the fact that we need to all be able to work together. I think family is not, we try not to have the family vibe of like, we're all about this big family, because we are trying to work together. And you know what? There's conversations we have that I probably couldn't have with my family because they're very difficult. But it really is for us about supporting each other, about results is one of our corporate our values. And the idea of results is you need to push things all the way through. It's sometimes easy in the startup world to kind of get to MVP in a lot of different ways. Okay, we have that going, on to the next thing. We have that going, on to the next thing. How do we really embrace the idea of finishing everything that we start? And then obviously results are important, because I'm in the business of surveys and helping to give results to our customers. So we holistically and really try and own that word and use the idea of pushing for results every time that we meet and that we engage in different activities.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about it. So it's high empathy, high, investment in people at the center, really working as a team, but high results. But it sounds a bit like a team sport. It sounds a bit like an Olympic champion team.
Yeah, I mean, anyone on this call who's talked to VCs who's raising money knows that in our world, the magic words are escape velocity. Everyone wants to know how you're going to achieve escape velocity. So if I'm growing like this and my margins are kind of in an even line, how am I going to get to the point where I can actually demonstrate escape velocity? Every amazing company and company that's raising, at fantastic valuations and multiples, I think is able to demonstrate that. Two of my colleagues I used to work with that are, kicking ass and taking names in the city are Jason Smith and Chris Harvickson. And I think they are telling great stories about escape velocity. And for us, that's the part that, that we're really focused on when we look at the future.
That's excellent. Listen, I'm just seeing a question in the chat that I'm going to steal, if you don't mind. How can the ecosystem support more startups to grow into ScaleUps? Well, you can be members of BC Tech. You can be supporters of ScaleUp BC. You can add your name to our list of supporters, because honestly, the only thing that's limiting, I mean, this is already a tremendously successful tech ecosystem, but the reality is that only 2% of our 11,000 tech companies reach the level of having 100 employees or more. And the answer for how to help more of our great startups achieve a certain level of scale success is to make sure that we can provide them with the education, the support services, and the kind of programs that BC Tech and others across the province run to give them what they need at those early stages. So please lend your names, because I need government money to do more of this good work.
Can I take a spin at that really quick?
Please.
Well, I think for me, it's like trying to be more. This is an opportunity, I think, for BC Tech, which is which is learning more about each other. There's certain areas of my platform and our customer base where we're already in front of that customer, and I could be selling more products on the cart if I had them. There's certain things I want to build that, for all I know, people have already built them. So the more we can do to understand each other and what we do, and it'd be amazing if the government could somehow step up and offer incentives for BC companies to partner with BC companies and go to market. I don't want to be in a world where I have to go to Waterloo or New York City or Palo Alto to try and understand the world out there and how we can potentially partner, when in Vancouver we have such a great ecosystem. So how we share that and how we do more, I don't know if it's speed dating, yeah, with or what, I think is hugely important.
I'm totally with you. And it's a made in BC problem, right? Like, so that we don't have the same landscape here in BC as exists in Ontario. And if we did, we'd be twice as successful. So let me go to Peter's question. Do you feel you need to reject or drop parts of your business if they can't scale?
Yeah, it's, yeah, I guess my short answer is no. I feel like, I don't need to drop them. I think we need to de-emphasize them. There's parts of our business that are really core to our identity, but that probably are not going to scale the way others will. And so, and so those are areas we're not going to get rid of. There's certain, and you sometimes will have areas of your business that are core to your identity. They're core to a use case. They're core to giving you an anchor in maybe an industry or a vertical or a customer or a testimonial. And that's okay. So, and I know we need to continue to do those things, it's all about making sure that you kind of starve those from a growth perspective and allow them to play the role they are, and be really honest about that and focus on the areas that are going to provide long-term value.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I think it really is important to be straightforward and honest about what's the growth priority and what is the business purpose of those things that aren't growing or scaling.
Totally.
And then the whole team can understand and be aligned. Let me go back to a question I saw from Christine in the chat. So with COVID, a lot of talent has moved out of the city, and hybrid remote first seems to be a trend that's sticking around. Are you strategizing around that in terms of culture and scaling?
Totally. So we did a few things. We moved our office from downtown into Strathcona in East Vancouver, where we have free parking. I did underestimated how amazing free parking is, because every single person that's moved out of the city, guess what they have? A car, probably a Tesla Model 3. And so those people all now are more than happy to commute from time to time. And so we have a new office that we're just putting the finishing touches on. We're playing with a system where everyone is required to come to the office for up to 1 week a month, but cannot visit the office for more than 3 weeks a month. And so that allows me to make sure I don't have so much space that I need a seat for every single bum that I have in the company. So I've basically built my own sort of WeWork space with hot desking, and my core G&A team's there all the time. But other people that want to go, if you want to go have a meeting or jam on something, or the whole team wants to hackathon or has a sprint they're going on, or maybe my sales and marketing team needs to get together, they can. And so what that means is we've taken the sort of the money that we would have spent downtown, and everyone has an awesome home office setup. It has a stipend for their home office, and also has a great place to come to work when they want to. So it's working well for us. I don't know if it works for everyone, but it's been a huge change. I had 2 floors downtown, and we moved from that to where we are, and we're really enjoying it.
Awesome. Thank you. Listen, I can see a question in the chat from Jacob, which is a really interesting one and a fantastic perspective, Jacob, really talking about the ecosystem impact, right? So when you've got an environment in Vancouver or BC where you've got the trickle down multi-generation effects where companies grow and scale into unicorns, or even, the multinationals that we have in town, where they've got senior experienced talent, director level talent, that leave to foster the next generation of startups, and they join startups or they join growth companies and bring that expertise to help the next generation grow. And I think Jacob's question is, how can we do more of that? How can we facilitate more of that? How can we make sure that we're reaping all of the benefits of having a really rich ecosystem, but keep it focused on enabling the next generation of startups to grow? What's your perspective?
Jake Steiner, he's a friend of mine. So thank you, Jake, for asking me a really hard question. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. There's been a few examples that I think have worked really well. Ryan Holmes did an amazing job with the League of Innovators and the next big thing, making sure that as you reach that level of success, that you immediately have a plan of how you reinvest that that talent into the ecosystem. I was a mentor of the next big thing for a while. I actually got to mentor the folks from Smart Suites, who had an absolutely phenomenal exit. I remember vividly, talking to that cohort of individuals. And so, maybe everyone can't do that. I think it is important to maybe have more, maybe at a province level, we can build a framework that says that, once you reach 50 million in revenue, the recommendation is that your leadership group invests X amount of time back into this community. And that once you reach 100 million, continue to invest that time back into the community. And that can mean a lot of different things. That could be an incubator, that can mean providing some space, that can mean mentorship, that can mean providing investment. So I think my vibe is that Vancouver and BC is we have a great tech ecosystem. There's a lot of money going on. Everyone is really leaning in and very positive. Now is the best time to kind of build some type of framework to really encourage people to do the right thing. I think this isn't happening more, not because people don't want to, just because, everyone's really busy and running around, and, one person's investing in BC cancer, one person's investing in something completely different. Let's make sure we're paying it back into our ecosystem. And maybe I'll challenge you, Jill, to think about some kind of framework that we could use to encourage the really successful unicorns and soonicorns to be able to help facilitate and pay back.
Totally. Well, that's a challenge enthusiastically accepted. That's actually what BC Tech for Startups and ScaleUp BC is designed to do. First and foremost is to provide that framework so that we can create those collaborations and create those connections. But you're right, we might need to take a closer look at incentives and recommendations. Mm-hmm. But that's exactly what I think we need to really be doing, making sure that we're not just getting occasional one-off unicorn successes, but that we're really building an ecosystem that's strong in its fundamentals at the core, at the foundational level, and strong and supported all the way through the growth cycle. So,
and there's a huge opportunity for the government here to get in on this, because the amount of tax-paying individuals that we're continuing to pull in and are supporting this ecosystem is huge. So it would be great to see them step up as well.
It'd be wonderful. Listen, we need to end it there. I've just got a few closing remarks, but before I do, Andrew, any parting words of advice to our audience today?
It's a big, scary world out there. So, feel the fear and do it anyways. That's what, I was sort of taught as a child. And, I think, and at the same time, do what you can as a leader to invest some time in other people and how you can help them grow and be successful. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
It's been super fun.
That's great. It's been fantastic, Andrew. Thank you. I'm going to get that on a t-shirt, feel the fear and do it anyway. With that, we're going to wrap up today's events. I want to let you all get to your 12 o'clock commitments, but thanks to Andrew for sharing your insights. It's been fantastic. One of our best fireside chats. Thanks to the audience for your great engagement and your questions.